What's going on? Welcome to Tech with Sean, and I pre-ordered my Steam Deck on day one, but I was in the Q2 2022 gang, and it finally showed up. And there's been some changes to the Steam Deck and its features since the launch reviews came out, so let's take a look at this and see what it's all about. First off, let me just do a quick run through of some of the specs. This here is the 512 gigabyte model. They do come with, different storage configurations, but they all have the same CPU and GPU in there. They all have the same 800p IPS screen, and it's actually pretty decent. I haven't found it to seem deficient or anything when I was playing on it, and I also own an OLED Switch. Now this isn't as saturated as the Switch, but really, unless you have them side by side, it's not like this looks bad at all when you're playing it. The brightness on it is pretty decent. This unit doesn't have much backlight bleed, no dead pixels, really not a lot to complain about as far as the screen itself. As far as the buttons and inputs go, you do have the touch screen, you have these two touch pads, you have your regular D-pad and buttons, you have really good analog sticks, it's got both kinds of triggers on the back, it's got some, I don't know what you call these, rear paddle buttons or whatever. It really has a ton of different control options. With PC games, you can usually configure the buttons however you want. And really, because of the flexibility, it's adaptable to a lot of different types of games. The deck also has surprisingly good speakers. A lot of times handheld devices and phones and stuff are pretty lame as far as the speakers go, but I was surprised this really sounds better than some budget laptops, I would say, so good job on the built-in speakers. It is a bigger device for a handheld, it's not like holding a Vita or a PSP or anything like that. It's bigger than the Switch, but if you put the Split Pad Pro controllers on the Switch, it comes out to be about the same size. This is a little heavier, but it doesn't really feel weird in your hands, and it feels decent when you're playing it. I mean, I like to play my Switch with the Split Pad Pro because I like the bigger grips and how it feels, so this really, isn't a lot different. It is a little bit heavier than something like a Switch, but it doesn't really feel heavy. Like, it does feel heavier by comparison, but it's not like you're holding a brick or something the whole time you're playing it. It also has a pretty decent battery. This being basically a PC though, the battery life will greatly vary depending on what you're doing, if you change any of the wattage settings, the screen brightness, all types of different factors. So if you're playing a AAA game like Forza, you might only get an hour and a half to 2 hours of battery life, but if you're playing like some retro games or some indie games, you could get easily over 5 hours. So really, depending on what you're doing on it, has a huge effect on the battery life. So while it's a really well put together device, I would say, it's made to play games, and unless it does that very well, then what's it worth? So what's it like to play games on this thing? It's actually pretty decent. This is a great device to kind of catch up on your backlog. I have a lot of games, maybe from a generation or two ago, several year old games like this Earth Defense Force Insect Armageddon. I've never really played that. I got it on a sale a while ago, but something like that runs amazing, and it's really fun to play. Some other lighter games I've been playing on here, we have Katamari Damacy Reroll, that runs really well. The Pinball Arcade game, I have that, and I've really been enjoying that on here. With the triggers and everything, it controls really well. The Panzer Dragoon remake runs really great on the deck, as does Luminous, which if you're looking for a puzzle game that has nice music and visuals, check out Luminous Remastered. It's really great on the deck. And as usual, I've been playing some Dragon Quest XI on here, and the right settings, I found it looks the best by turning the settings up a little bit and then locking the frame rate to 45 frames per second. You don't really need fast action for it, but being able to play it with a smooth frame rate and with the anti-aliasing and stuff turned up a little bit, I found was preferable to playing it on low settings. Pixel art games look great. The Final Fantasy Pixel remasters are out on Steam, and playing through something like that on here is a really good experience. I also played some Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare Remastered on here to see what some shooters were like, and it ran really well at the right settings. It got 60 frames per second. However, I will say that the deck is not my preferred way to play a first-person shooter. Even though it was running at 60 frames per second, you just could feel a difference. Once you get used to playing shooters and first-person games on that high refresh screen, going back to 60 hertz or 45 hertz in some cases, you just feel like you're missing out a little bit. However, you're still playing on the go, so there's definitely something to say for that. For me, I prefer playing like older type games, maybe some indies and stuff like that. For AAA type games, I'm probably going to want to play on my desktop most of the time. You know, it's cool to have this for when you're in a pinch or if you need to play when you're on the go, but you are going to be limited to 800p. The screen is only 60 hertz and it is smaller, so I don't know if this is going to be the best for like competitive shooters where you want to see the most detail and run at a high refresh rate. But if you're just playing some stuff and 60 frames is fine, you know, like I've been playing a lot of puzzle games, RPGs, stuff like that on here, and it's really been great for stuff like that. But really, the flexibility is a big selling point. You know, you could put it in desktop mode, you could install EmuDeck on here. There's a ton of different things you can do since it's an open platform. I haven't really noticed anything that I would complain about with the controls. The D-pad is pretty responsive. I actually find myself using this touchpad more than I thought I would. You know, sometimes when I'm in menus and stuff, I'll just use the touchpad to navigate through it instead of using the D-pad. I haven't only been playing indie games though, you know, I messed with some AAA stuff on here to see what it was like. I was playing Forza Horizon 5 on it, and with the new feature on here where you can adjust the refresh rate of the screen, that was clutch when playing these AAA games. So when I played Forza, I was able to go in, turn the screen refresh rate down to 40 or 45 frames per second, and that gave me a much smoother overall experience. In a lot of AAA games, the APU in here is going to struggle, and you might have dips from 60 down to 50 or 45 frames per second, but by lowering that limit and keeping it consistent, it gives you a much smoother experience. And 40 frames per second on a handheld, it's not as good as 60, but I'll tell you what, it feels a lot better than 30 frames per second, and that's a really cool feature that they've added. They do have a bunch of features in there, you know, it being Valve, you can go and you can do like half rate shading, which I haven't really messed with. It could give you some performance gains in some situations, but it really negatively affects the image quality, so I would just suggest leaving that off most of the time. You can also go in, set a TDP limit and, you know, control how much power you're sending to the GPU, so depending on what you're playing and how much battery life you want to get out of it, they've added a lot of features in here, and it's really flexible, and you can configure it basically however you want it to run. That's a big difference between this and something like a Switch. You know, on a console, you just aren't going to have those options to tweak it unless it's hacked or something. Overall, I think it's a really interesting device. You know, I've never messed with the Aya Neo or anything like that, so this is my first real handheld gaming type PC experience, and it is pretty interesting being able to take your Steam library with the cloud saves and everything, and just being able to, you know, I'm sitting on my couch, I just want to load this up and grind out some levels or, you know, do a race or some puzzles, and being able to do that without going over to your PC or, you know, setting up a laptop or something, it's pretty cool. I also really like the suspend and resume feature. If you're playing a game and you just hit the power button, it'll go to sleep, kind of like a console, and then when you come back, hit that power button again and it wakes right back up. At least in the Steam games that I've tried so far. I don't know if that would work as well if you were in desktop mode or using games from some other launcher or something. Because it's an open platform, there's going to be variability between the different ways that you can run software on it. It's great for certain use cases. Like I said before, if you're a competitive gamer, you know, I don't think you're going to want to do your Counter-Strike matches on here on a 60 hertz screen at 800p. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think most of the people that are going to use this are going to be playing more story-based games, lighter indie type games and stuff like that. You can run the AAA stuff on it, it's just not ideal, I would say. And for a PC gamer, you know, I think it's a really cool supplementary device, but I don't think this is going to replace something like the Switch for most people. It's just not plug and play. It has way too much tweaking for your average consumer out there probably. They just want to be able to pop in a game cartridge and just play without changing anything. A lot of games on here, even if they're supported, they might not boot up at the right resolution. You might have to go in, you know, set it to run at 800p instead of like 800 by 600 or something. And for a lot of people, they don't even know what that means, you know? So it's not out of the box, you know, just easy like a console. There is a certain amount of tweaking and computer knowledge that you probably should have if you're going to pick one of these up, but for your average PC gamer, it's totally within the realm of doability, and for a PC gamer, I think this is a really cool supplementary device. But it's only been out for a few months. They've already done tons of like quality of life updates, added cool features, they're verifying more games all the time, so if they keep that up, eventually, who knows, maybe it could get as, easy to use as a console. The way this is selling so far, I think it is going to be a success though, and I'm really excited to see what possible future iterations of the Steam Deck could be like. I'm imagining a next-gen Steam Deck with a better CPU, GPU, maybe an OLED screen, maybe a little bit lighter with better battery life. If they do that and tighten up the software experience, it's just going to get more and more compelling. For a first-generation device, I think this is pretty amazing. So overall, I'm pretty happy with the Steam Deck. If you guys want to get one, I hope you're in the queue, or maybe you've already gotten one. If you are, drop a comment down below. Let me know if you're waiting on it or if you already have one and what you think of it. Also, let me know if there's any videos or comparisons that you'd like to see with the Steam Deck, because I have one. I can make some videos about it if y'all want to see them. But thank you for watching along. Make sure to drop a like if you liked it, subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you in the next video.